empowerment group.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Bottom up, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Good.
That's right.
I want you to talk about the strategic partner program that you have, but I like to mention my homeboy, Jeff Banks, who is from Cincinnati, graduated from the same high school I did, Withrow, and he's been in D.C. for a while, and he's been a part of the collective banking group for a long time at Industrial Bank, as well as now
And now Bank of Georgetown.
Bank of Georgetown.
That's
yeah.
right. Jeff Banks is, my goodness, a wonderful, savvy guy,
Yeah.
great banker, but he also is very much in tune with the community.
Mhm.
And so when
That
he
he
was
is.
at Industrial Bank, he really made it an effort. And again, from the banker's standpoint, we recognize and we want them to understand that this is a different kind of relationship.
Right.
And so Jeff makes it a point to really visit his clients. And one of the things that we do within the collective empowerment group is that we actually have what we used to call CBG Sundays.
Okay.
Now we'll change that name to CEG,
CEG
Sundays.
right.
But having indeed officials from the banks to come into the churches on a Sunday and to be able to acknowledge them and to say that for the members of the church that are interested in getting more information from this particular institution, immediately after the service, we'll have a table out in the
Okay.
vestibule and you can be able to obtain some further information. The bank's therefore got a captive audience. We
Right.
don't mind doing that
Right.
if it's going to benefit the members of the church.
That's right.
Jeff has been doing that, Jeff Banks, when he was at Industrial, and now he's doing it at Bank of Georgetown, and he's doing a marvelous, marvelous job. But he's an example of really how a banker ought to be.
Yes.
And that is
He is.
getting out from behind the desk.
That's right.
And especially if you're looking at trying to find ways to grow that bank.
Right. Yeah.
Get from behind the desk, get out into the community,
Right.
and connect with people.
That's right. He is so good at that.
Mhm.
When I was there for my daughter when she came to go to Howard, she may be going to Howard. It's looking good. But he took us to dinner at one of the restaurants that he financed. And he said there was another one down the street, across the street, that he made a loan to. And it's a huge restaurant. And, you know, he is the kind of guy who will go out and develop relationships, not wait for people to come to him, but he'll go out and develop those kinds of relationships. Well known in the D.C. area, and I'm proud of him. Like I said, he's from Cincinnati. But the strategic partnership.
Yeah, the reason why we created these relationships with businesses is because, again, we want to make sure that the members of our church are going to be able to go to businesses, particularly to the retailers, but it doesn't have to be really retailers only.
Right.
I mean, for example, we have a couple of law firms that are part of the strategic partnership.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of accountants. But again, the whole purpose there is to be able to find companies that really will treat our members fairly,
There you go.
equitably,
Yeah.
provide a good product,
Right.
good service at the end of the day. And so rather than for that company to have to expend additional advertising dollars, they can have access, if you will, to our community, but we're expecting you in turn to provide a good product
That's
or a
right.
good
Yeah.
service.
Yeah.
And it's worked. And so we've got now 20 strategic partners. Now, part of that also that benefits the CEG is that every strategic partner has to pay a fee
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey.
in order to do business
Exactly.
with the CEG.
Yeah, yeah.
And that helps to underwrite our operating expenses for the year.
But what that fee is really paying for a guaranteed return
Absolutely.
on investment.
Absolutely.
Because you, in turn, direct the members to go and do business with those,
Absolutely.
with those businesses.
And they have access. So in other words,
Exactly.
for the businesses, they know where Greater Mount Nebo is located, so
Right.
they can call upon me and they can ask me, Pastor, can we leave materials here? Or can I come out on Sunday morning? And the answer is absolutely.
Right. And they
So-
participate in your annual events and
Oh,
your economic
yes.
empowerment
And our
conferences,
workshops
come to your
throughout the
meetings.
year. Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. That's got to be good for it, especially a small business.
Sure, I'll give you a wonderful example of that. There's not too many bottled water companies that are owned by African Americans.
Right.
But there's one in our area called Jordan Springs. And so as a result of the increase in his business, he wanted to know, could we provide him with some potential employees? Well,
Wow.
of course, the answer is yes. And
That's-
so his business has grown not only through the churches, but then we also insisted that the bank start using his bottled water
Man,
company.
man.
And so I joke with people sometimes when they come into my office and I ask them, would you like some black water?
Yeah.
And of course, with that puzzled look, and then I have to tell them, well, okay, it's called Jordan Springs and it's
Right.
African American owned.
There you go.
But that's the power of this effort.
That's right. Yeah.
And to be able to see that business grow from a very small mom and pop operation to a much larger entity now.
Yeah.
And again, knowing full well that the Collective Empowerment Group helped to make a difference.
That's beautiful. I mean, I think about all the potential that's sitting in the pews, like you said, every Sunday. We may wake up on Monday and we had a pipe to break. And we call it, you look in the yellow pages, call the plumber. We may have been sitting next to one,
That's right.
you know, on
That's right.
Sunday at the church.
That's right.
And you talk about accountants and attorneys and financial planners, insurance people. All of these folks, somewhere, are in your chapter.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
you direct people to those folks, and you start to circulate those dollars.
Sure.
And like you say, you start to create jobs for our children.
Mhm.
You increase ownership.
Mhm.
And that's what wealth building is all about.
Mhm.
And that's why the CEG is so important. And here in Cincinnati, we are just working as hard as we can to build our chapter up, to recruit more churches, and to use that collective leverage here in this city, because there are so many people out here that are hurting now. And I mean, there are cooperative purchasing programs and affinity groups all over, but we have very few of them. And the more we understand the power of the collective and then use that to leverage lower prices and discounts and good relationships with businesses, we'll be much better off. I mean, look at the price of gasoline now. I mean, we have to figure out a way to use our leverage to decrease that for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I've written about that so many times, and food is going through the roof now.
Mhm.
People can't afford to buy the food.
Utility
that
costs.
Utilities, yeah, I want you to talk about that as well.
Mhm.
I mean, there's so much here in this notion of the collective empowerment group that we can take advantage of and create prosperity, create wealth, create better relationships, be better stewards of what we've been blessed with. There is just so much that it just keeps me, well, you know, I've been high on it ever since I found out about it. It's just a blessing to have met you and to have found out as much as I have about the CEG. And now that we have a chapter here, you know I'm going to be hard at work trying to grow it as well.
And I think what people need to know is that, as we've kind of referenced repeatedly today, that this is a chapter here in Cincinnati, but Cincinnati is now one of 7 chapters
Right.
nationally.
Right.
And that has some major implications,
Oh,
because
yes.
as we look to create relationships with national companies, national retailers, therefore people here in Cincinnati to know that when you walk into one of those national retailers that we have developed a relationship with,
Yes.
that has power.
Yes.
And then if you go to another city where there's a chapter of the Collective Empowerment Group and one of those retailers is there, you'll be able to prayerfully get the same kind of discount
That's right.
you got in Cincinnati,
Exactly.
simply by being able to show a card
Right.
that shows you as being a part of the Collective Empowerment Group. So, yeah, there's a lot of benefit to this.
Oh, yeah, and there's much talk about us living in a global society now. And I heard you mention earlier that you've been to Africa, and you've been to Europe, London, and this whole notion can expand globally, not just locally, not just around the country, but it can expand globally.
I never would have thought about that, Jim, quite frankly, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Right.
But you're right, we've become such an interdependent world
Right.
now. Look at all that's happening in terms of now in Libya,
Yes.
and what has taken place in Tunisia and
Right.
Egypt. We're finding out about things real time. But there's also positive economic implications.
That's right.
And so even now for the Collective Empowerment Group, by virtue of Skyping and having conference calls,
Yeah.
I've already had interest for the Collective Empowerment Group in Cape Town, South Africa.
Wow.
Also Benin, a West African nation. And even when we were in France, they were talking about, particularly within the Black community there,
Right.
about the need for having something
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
So this is really taking on some
Universal
global,
concept.
absolutely global dimensions
Universal
to it.
concept.
Mhm.
Now, you mentioned money. We may as well talk about that. The strategic partners pay a fee. How did you structure your membership for the churches, and then, you know, beyond that, and the banks and all of that?
Sure. We have membership dues that are provided by the church. The individuals that are members of those churches don't have to pay
Right.
to be a member of the Collective Empowerment Group, but the church does. And it's driven by the size of the church. And in our case, in our chapter, that means that the membership fees, annual membership fees, range from $100 all the way up to $5,000, just again depending upon the size of the church. With respect to the strategic partners, they too pay a fee, and again depending upon the size of that business, and likewise with the banks.
Yeah.
With the banks, for example, our fees that we impose upon the banks at this point range from $16,000 up to $33,000 annually. So the banks pay
Wow.
in order to participate.
Yeah, yeah.
So we actually have those revenues coming in because again we have operating costs.
Right.
We have an executive director, in our case with our chapter, and administrative support staff to be able to disseminate information and to help design the workshops and the seminars
Right.
that we hold throughout the year.
Yeah. That's one thing that some of us have a hard time understanding, that we have to pay our way. I mean, freedom ain't free. And that if we have something of value, we need to value it enough to put some money into it. And pooling our resources, I mean, it's just another aspect of pooling our resources as far as I'm concerned. We pay into our own entity so that all of us can be better off. And the fees that you collect from the partners, the churches, the banks, it goes into helping the organization grow. And look at what you've accomplished in all these years. Of course, here in Cincinnati, we charge we based ours on the number of members in the churches as well. And we have a small fee for strategic partners. We're going to grow, but you know, we knew we had to start off a lot lower than where you are. But the concept is not so much about the money, it's about the value, how you value your own economic empowerment. Do you value it enough to put a few dollars behind it collectively so that we can grow our businesses, so that we can have better relationships with those entities out there such as banks and insurance companies and everyone else that too often we just sit back and complain about. And my thing is that if we are just going to complain and not stand up and do something about it, why complain?
Well, yeah, and I think that for us, what we'd also like to be able to do ultimately is to be able to gather enough financial strength to be able to buy some of these very same institutions that we're talking about. So that why not within the media, why not within other sectors? And so at every meeting that we hold, we're actually asking the pastors and those that are attending our meetings to put monies into what we call a power in one account. So that every time we come together, we're adding additional monies into this account that is accruing interest that ultimately we will be investing into safe instruments, but sooner or later, over time, to be able to start buying and creating equity for the collective empowerment group and by extension for the member churches. Right,
and that's one thing I really liked when I was there at a couple of your meetings to see. Every time you get together is that everybody puts in at least $1. Some they may want to put in more, but at least $1. And over time, like you said, that's going to add up, and that's money that you have set aside. I mean, it's unencumbered. You can do some innovative, creative things with that money. And you know, when I wrote my first book, I put a chapter in there called The Black Tax. And the concept was that every time black people got together at concerts or wherever they were, we ought to take up at least $1 for everybody and put it in a common fund. And this was back in '97 when I wrote this book. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense to me, you know. Every time we get together, why would we go to a concert, for instance, pay $50, $60, $80 for a ticket, and we can't put $1 of that back toward ourselves in some kind of collective pool that we can start to invest in our businesses, make loans to our business owners, you know, and create some wealth for ourselves. So I just love that power, the power of one that you guys put together. And I'm going to suggest that here in our chapter, that every time we get together, we take up, I don't care if it's 2 people in it, that's $2. You know, at least $1 a person every time we get together. So I just think that's a beautiful concept.
And the other thing behind it is that we recognize that sooner or later we'll be checking out of here. And what we need to be doing is really leaving a legacy for our younger generation.
That's right.
And in fact, we've got to make sure, that's one of the areas that we need to strengthen, even in our chapter, is to make sure that we're providing more information and teaching our young people. Not just to simply buy the ice cream but own the ice
Own
cream
the
store.
ice cream. That's right. That's right.
Don't just
Yeah.
wear the tennis shoes, but buy some stock
Own some
in the
stock.
company.
I teach that to my class at the University of Cincinnati.
Have to do it.
Yeah.
Have to do it. Have to understand what wealth is really all about. Don't just get the allowance,
Right.
but indeed save some of that allowance, and then get to the point where you are investing some of that allowance, so that you don't have to aspire to be the next Michael Jordan or the
Right.
next other famous basketball player,
Yeah.
because most of them, in fact, they flame out after about 3 or 4 or
That's
5 years
exactly
anyway,
right. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
are all injured and trying to find a way to make their way.
Yeah.
But you can find a way to create wealth for yourself by instilling within yourself those kinds of economic principles that we're teaching within the Collective Empowerment
Right.
Group, and what you've been also teaching for years.
Yeah. You just gave my workshop. You know, the title of my workshop that I'm doing at the event is Leaving a Legacy. And you're exactly right. To leave with our children, to have them emulate us. And I was reminded of, I was looking through the Bible and trying to find some issues that related to that, and one I found was Elijah and Elisha. When he said, before Elijah was taken up, give me a double portion of your spirit.
Yeah.
He wanted to have his characteristics. He wasn't saying, well, give me more than you have. I want to have your characteristics because you've been my role model, and I want to do I want to carry on your work. And I'm told that Elisha did more miracles than Elijah did. So that's what we have to be about in leaving a legacy. It's not just about money, although that is included, but we have to build our character and wear it in such a way that our children will look at us and say, that's what I want to do. That's the kind of person I want to be, and do those things, especially that the Collective Empowerment Group is doing, to have our children say, hey, that's a good organization. When I get old enough, I'm going to be in it. I may run it one day, and I'm going to be involved. All those kinds of things are really important when it comes to leaving a legacy here and a foundation upon which our children can stand. So it's just a great concept. We have probably about 2 or 3 minutes left. I just want you to sum up for me. What do you think at this stage in your life? I mean, you traveled the world and you've started the CEG, and where are you now? Where are you planning on going?
Well, I think that for me, we're still pretty much in the infancy stage of the CEG. I mean, we've been in existence now for 15 years, but in the larger scheme of things, that's not a long time.
Right.
But I am pleasantly surprised, and it causes me to chuckle when I have people that say, you mean to tell me you kept those preachers together for
Right.
15
That's
years?
right.
And it's not me, but it's really because this is God ordained, God inspired, and because God is the one that's directing this, that's why it has lasted and has grown to the extent that it has. What I pray for, Jim, is that not only people here in the Cincinnati area, but other cities around this country will realize the impact of us coming together, and that other chapters will be created in other places around this country, and quite frankly, other parts of the world. It can make a difference.
I believe that. I believe that so much. And I just appreciate everything you've done, Dr. Weaver. I mean, you know, we could have another show for another 2 hours and talk about all those things, but I'm glad you're here. Look forward to our continued relationship, and look forward to what you have to say at our event, and like you said, our chapter growing and doing the things that we're supposed to do to empower ourselves. That's what it's all about. I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for being here.
God bless you.
All right.